She fled abuse with newborn in blizzard. Lakota tribe gave her what law couldn't, the kind of cold that seemed to cut through layers of clothing and settle deep into the bones. Snow fell in thick sheets, carried by a wind that howled like a wild animal through the trees. In the midst of the blizzard, a young mother stumbled through the frozen forest, holding her newborn tightly against her chest. The baby was wrapped in a thin blanket, its tiny body trembling with cold and fear. She felt the child's warmth fading against her own, and panic tightened her chest. She had waited too long, and now there was no turning back. Tonight, she had to escape. Her home had not been a safe place for months. What was supposed to be her sanctuary had turned into a place of fear and sorrow. She remembered the long nights when the walls seemed to close in and every sound made her flinch. The baby had been born in that house, and even the cries of her own child were met with coldness and anger instead of care. Each day had been a struggle to survive, and she had silently promised herself that if she ever had a chance to leave, she would take it. The baby's life depended on her courage, and tonight she finally found the strength to act. Her boots sank into the deep snow with every step, and her legs ached from the effort. The wind whipped her face, stinging her skin, and she could barely see through the white blur that surrounded her. She moved slowly, each movement deliberate, trying not to slip on the hidden ice beneath the snow. The forest was dense, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer as the storm thickened. Sometimes she tripped over hidden roots or rocks, the baby's small cries echoing in her ears. Each time she forced herself to keep going, whispering words of comfort to the little life in her arms. "Don't worry, little one.
I will keep you safe."
The night was silent except for the blizzard and the occasional crack of a distant tree branch under the weight of snow. It was a silence that felt both dangerous and comforting. Dangerous because she was alone, with nothing between her and the cold except her will to survive. Comforting because it meant no one else was nearby. No one to stop her, no one to watch her flee. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her face and pressed on, the baby's soft whimpers guiding her steps. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes in the endless white. Her fingers were raw and numb, but she held the baby close, keeping it protected from the storm. Her thoughts wandered as she walked. She thought about the early days of her pregnancy, when she had hoped for joy and love. She remembered imagining a future where she and her child could be safe and happy. Now that dream felt like a distant memory, a fragile thing buried beneath months of fear and suffering. But even in the cold, a small spark of hope remained. Hope that she could find safety, that someone out there might help her and her child survive. The baby stirred, and she murmured softly, brushing a hand across its tiny head. Its cries were faint, barely audible over the wind, but each one made her heart race. She could feel the life in her arms, fragile and precious, and it reminded her why she had to keep going. Every step was agony, her body trembling with exhaustion, yet she refused to stop. She had no choice. Stopping meant the cold would take them, and she could not allow that. She stumbled over a fallen branch and fell to her knees, snow clinging to her hair and clothes. Her breath came in short gasps, fogging in the icy air. She pressed the baby close, feeling its tiny heart beating against her own. She whispered promises of safety, though she wasn't sure if she could keep them. The forest seemed endless, the snow never ending. Yet she moved forward, driven by a single determination: survival. Memories of the life she left behind flashed in her mind. She remembered the locked doors, the harsh words, the nights when fear had been her only companion. She thought of her own mother, long gone, who had always told her to be brave, to protect herself and those she loved. That voice echoed in her mind now, giving her strength. She repeated it over and over, a mantra against the storm. I can do this. I must do this. My baby will survive. As the night grew colder, the blizzard showed no sign of easing. The wind howled in her ears, and the snow blurred the path ahead. Her boots were soaked, her hands stiff with cold, and her legs felt as though they would give way at any moment. Yet she kept moving, step by painful step, focusing only on the tiny bundle in her arms. She imagined a place where the baby could be warm, where it could sleep without fear, where her own body could finally rest. That thought carried her forward, past the exhaustion and pain, past the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Hours turned into a battle of endurance. She began to feel the snow seeping through her coat, chilling her to the core. Her lungs burned with each breath, and her vision blurred. Sometimes she slipped, falling into the snow, but each time she forced herself up again. She hummed softly to the baby, a low sound meant to soothe both herself and the tiny life she protected. The baby's cries softened at her voice, and she felt a small relief. It was a reminder that they were still alive, that they could still make it. At one point she reached a small clearing in the forest. The wind was still fierce, but the open space gave her a moment to catch her breath. She pressed the baby closer, feeling its warmth against her frozen skin. She allowed herself a single moment to look up at the night sky, hidden behind clouds but faintly visible, imagining stars that could guide her. In that brief pause, she felt a fragile sense of hope. She was still moving. She was still alive. And the baby was still alive. Then, as if guided by fate, she heard a distant sound. At first it was faint, almost lost in the storm, but it grew clearer as she strained her ears. The sound of drums, steady and rhythmic, muffled by the blizzard. Her heart leapt. Could it be real? Could someone be out there? A chance of safety? She did not know, but she ran toward it, stumbling through the snow, driven by hope stronger than the exhaustion in her body. The snow whipped her face and her legs burned with effort, but the sound pulled her forward like a lifeline. She stumbled, almost falling again, but each time she clutched the baby closer and pressed on. The clearing seemed endless, yet she refused to give in to despair. Every step brought her closer to warmth, to safety, to life. Finally, through the swirling snow, she saw faint shapes moving ahead. Figures emerged from the whiteness, steady and calm against the chaos of the storm. She could barely believe her eyes. They approached quickly, their hands reaching out to her and the baby. She collapsed into their embrace, the snow melting from her hair as they wrapped her and the child in thick blankets. Warmth spread through her, a sensation she had forgotten existed. The baby quieted instantly, pressed against the bodies of strangers who had become guardians in the storm. For the first time in months, the mother allowed herself to breathe. The fear that had accompanied her every step began to lift, replaced by an overwhelming relief. She held her child close, looking into its peaceful face, and realized that they had survived. The storm still raged outside, but within the arms of these strangers there was warmth, safety, and care. She had left the life that had threatened to destroy them behind, and though the path ahead was uncertain, she knew that for the first time they had a chance. The snow continued to fall, the wind continued to howl, but she felt a lightness she had not known in years. The journey had been brutal, but she had made it, and the tiny life in her arms would survive because of her courage. In that quiet moment, surrounded by strangers who had become their protectors, she allowed herself to hope. Hope that the world could be more than fear and pain. Hope that the baby could grow up safe, loved, and free. And as the fire crackled nearby, melting the snow from their clothes, she held her child close and whispered a vow to herself. No matter what came next, they would survive together. The night was still bitter, and the blizzard was not yet over. But in the warmth of the blankets and the presence of those who had come to help, the young mother finally felt the first real sense of safety. It was the beginning of a new journey, one that promised healing, courage, and the possibility of a life where they could be free from fear. The blizzard continued to rage, snow piling high and winds whipping around the young mother and her newborn. Each step through the thick, icy drifts was a battle, and every gust threatened to knock her off balance. Her body ached from exhaustion, her hands stiff and numb despite the thin glove she had wrapped around them. The baby nestled against her chest, its tiny fingers curled as if holding on to life itself. She whispered softly, murmuring words of comfort that were half for the baby and half for herself. "It's okay, little one. We will be safe soon. Just hold on with me." The forest stretched endlessly before her. a maze of white shadows and snow-covered branches. The familiar path she had known for years was gone, under layers of ice and frost. She moved slowly, feeling her way forward, trying not to slip. Every branch she passed seemed alive, threatening to snag her hair or coat. Her vision blurred in the swirling snow, and the world became a mixture of gray and white. Yet even in the harshness of the storm, she refused to stop. She had no choice but to keep moving. Hours passed, though it felt like mere minutes. The wind howled in her ears, drowning out the faint cries of her baby. Her legs trembled, and fatigue weighed heavily on her shoulders. She pressed the child closer, feeling the tiny heartbeat against her own. She imagined the world her child might see someday, a world of safety, of warmth, of kindness, and the thought gave her strength. The pain in her body did not matter. The fear in her mind did not matter. Only the life in her arms mattered, and she would not give up. Her mind wandered to memories of the past, memories she had tried to forget. She remembered the nights when she had cried silently, hoping someone would notice, hoping someone would help. She remembered the days when she had felt trapped, wondering if escape was even possible. Now, every step through the blizzard was proof that escape was real. Every footfall in the deep snow, every moment she refused to succumb to exhaustion was a victory over fear. The baby stirred, making a small whimper. She leaned forward slightly, pressing her face to the child's tiny head. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. She could feel the baby's warmth returning slightly as she held it tighter, the faint rhythm of its breathing steadying her own racing heart. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the small comfort of connection, a lifeline in the midst of the storm. Suddenly, she stumbled over a hidden root, falling forward into the snow. The baby cried loudly and her heart clenched in panic. She pressed her body against the small life, covering it with her own coat and scarf. She forced herself up, hands raw and trembling, and continued moving. Each time she fell, each time the snow seemed too deep, each time the wind nearly knocked her off her feet, she reminded herself of one thing. She could not give up. Not now. Not ever. Through the thick snow, she began to hear faint sounds. At first, they were barely audible. A low, rhythmic thumping that could have been her imagination. She paused, listening carefully, and realized it was real. The sound was steady, almost like a drum beat. Her heart leapt. Could it be people? Could it be help? She did not know, but the sound gave her hope, a small light in the endless gray. She pushed herself forward, moving faster despite her fatigue. The wind whipped her hair into her eyes, snow stung her cheeks, and her legs burned from the effort. Yet she moved on, guided by the sound. Each step brought her closer, and with each step, the hope that had almost vanished began to return. She imagined a place where she could rest, where the baby could sleep without fear, where she could finally breathe without panic. That vision carried her forward like a lifeline. The sound grew louder, clearer. The beat of drums echoed through the trees, rhythmic and strong, a heartbeat against the storm. She called out, her voice weak but determined, hoping someone would hear. "Hello! Please, we need help!" Her voice was almost lost in the wind, but she kept calling, refusing to give up. The baby's cries had quieted slightly, as if sensing the promise of safety. Finally, through the blizzard, she saw movement. Figures appeared in the distance, shapes moving with purpose through the snow. Relief washed over her, though she could hardly believe her eyes. The figures approached steadily, calm and unhurried despite the storm. They were not strangers in the cruel sense. They were people who would help. Her heart pounded as she stumbled forward to meet them. When she reached the figures, they immediately wrapped her and the baby in thick blankets. Warmth spread through her frozen body like fire, melting the numbness that had consumed her. The baby quieted instantly, nestled in the blankets, safe for the first time in hours. She looked into the eyes of those who had helped her and felt a gratitude she could not put into words. They did not ask questions, they did not judge. They only offered care and protection, a shelter against the storm and the hardships of the night. The mother shivered but allowed herself to rest for a moment, leaning against one of the strangers. She could hear the baby's steady breathing and feel its tiny heartbeat. Tears blurred her vision, but they were not tears of despair. They were tears of relief, of hope, of the first real sense of safety she had felt in months. The storm continued outside, but here, in the warmth of blankets and the kindness of strangers, she felt a flicker of life returning. They guided her to a small shelter nearby, a place protected from the wind and cold. Inside, a fire crackled warmly, and the air smelled of wood and comfort. She laid the baby down gently on a bed of furs, covering it with more blankets. For the first time, she could take a deep breath without fear. The baby stirred but did not cry, sensing the safety surrounding it. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her own heartbeat slow as the warmth seeped into her bones. As she sat by the fire, she realized that this moment marked a turning point. The fear that had controlled her life for months could not reach her here. The baby would be safe, and perhaps so would she. The strangers had given her something that laws and institutions had failed to provide: care, understanding, and protection. She allowed herself to imagine a life beyond fear, a life where she could raise her child in peace. The firelight flickered on the walls of the shelter, casting shadows that danced like quiet spirits around her. She watched the baby's chest rise and fall with each breath, and for the first time in months, she smiled. The road ahead would still be difficult, and the storm outside was far from over, but she had survived the night. She had survived the blizzard, and most importantly, she had kept her child alive. She whispered softly to the baby, a promise that she intended to keep. "We are safe now. You will not be alone. I will protect you, always." The words felt heavy with emotion, but they were filled with hope. Hope that this night was not the end, but the beginning of something better. Hope that the child could grow up without fear, surrounded by kindness and care. The blizzard raged outside, snow piling against the shelter walls, wind howling like a restless spirit. But inside, the mother and child were safe. She felt the warmth of the fire on her cheeks, the blankets wrapping her body, and the steady heartbeat of her baby in her arms. In that moment, she understood that survival was more than just escaping danger. Survival was about finding hope, even in the harshest of storms. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the exhaustion of the journey wash over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they were safe. Tonight, she had survived. And tomorrow, she would begin a new chapter, guided by the kindness of those who had rescued her and the unbreakable bond with the child she held so tightly. The storm outside had not yet passed, but inside the shelter there was warmth, safety, and a quiet sense of relief. The young mother sat with her newborn nestled against her chest, wrapped in layers of blankets that smelled faintly of wood smoke. The baby stirred, stretching tiny arms, and she pressed a hand to its soft back, feeling the steady rhythm of its heartbeat. For the first time in days, she felt that a future might exist, a future where her child could grow without fear. The strangers who had rescued her were not strangers for long. They were members of a Lakota tribe, a community who moved with calm certainty, even in the storm. They spoke gently, their words soft and melodic, though the mother could not understand everything. Yet their eyes, warm and steady, conveyed the meaning she needed. "You are safe here." They brought more blankets, warm water, and food, helping her to rest while still keeping the baby close. Each gesture, each careful movement, communicated care and understanding without requiring explanations. She watched as one of the elders approached, a woman whose hair was streaked with silver, eyes filled with kindness. She motioned for the mother to sit and then knelt beside the baby. She examined the tiny child carefully but gently, checking its warmth and breathing, then nodded and smiled. The mother felt a relief she could not put into words. In those simple gestures, she understood that they would protect her and her baby, even when the law had failed. The mother wanted to speak, to explain everything that had brought her here, but the words felt heavy in her throat. She had lived in fear for so long that even talking about it was exhausting. The elder did not push. She simply nodded, as if acknowledging what could not be spoken. Others in the tribe brought more blankets and furs, arranging a small bed for the mother and child near the fire. The warmth of the fire seeped into her frozen body, and for the first time in weeks she could feel her muscles relaxing, her heartbeat slowing. As the night passed, the mother listened to the sounds of the tribe. There were low voices, gentle laughter, and soft footsteps on the packed snow outside. The rhythms of life were different here, slower, more deliberate, more connected. She realized that this was not just safety from the storm, but safety from the harshness she had endured in her home. The tribe offered protection not through walls or laws, but through care, attention, and shared responsibility. In the morning, the storm had eased, leaving a world blanketed in fresh snow, sparkling in pale sunlight. The mother stepped outside with her baby, wrapped tightly in blankets. Her eyes widened at the beauty around her, the snow-covered plains, the distant hills, the clear sky above. She had never experienced such silence, such peace. It was a stark contrast to the fear and chaos she had left behind. Members of the tribe guided her to a small lodge where they offered her warm food and a place to sit. The mother felt a sense of normalcy for the first time in months. She fed her baby gently, watching the small hands grasp at the air, and felt a surge of gratitude. These people who had taken her in without question were giving her a chance she had never imagined. A chance to heal. A chance to live. Over the following days, she began to understand the ways of the tribe. She learned that they valued community above all else, that everyone had a role, and everyone looked out for one another. The elders shared stories of resilience, of hardship, and of hope, teaching lessons through words and actions. She listened intently, absorbing every detail, every gesture, every lesson. It was a different kind of education than she had ever received, one rooted in respect, patience, and care. The mother also began to notice the quiet ways the tribe helped her. A young woman showed her how to prepare simple meals using available ingredients. Men and women alike offered guidance on keeping warm, on moving safely through the snow, and on caring for her baby. The mother felt a sense of belonging that she had never known. She was no longer alone. She was part of something bigger, something protective and enduring. She also began to learn the sacred practices of the Lakota, small rituals that brought comfort and peace. She watched as the tribe made offerings to the fire, sang gentle songs, and performed movements that seemed to connect them with the earth, the wind, and the sky. At first she felt unsure, but soon she realized that these practices were meant to heal, to restore balance, and to create a sense of harmony. She began to participate, holding her baby close, and felt a deep sense of calm that she had not known in years. Her days became filled with small victories. She learned to move through the snow with less effort, to build small fires for warmth, and to care for herself as well as for her child. Each night she tucked the baby in carefully, watching the small chest rise and fall with each breath. She whispered softly, repeating the promises she had made in the storm, that they would be safe, that they would survive, that she would protect them no matter what. The tribe continued to offer support without asking for anything in return. They understood that healing could not be rushed, that fear and pain took time to fade. They offered space when she needed it and presence when she felt vulnerable. Slowly, the mother felt a sense of strength returning, a confidence that she could face the world again. She realized that she had survived more than just the blizzard. She had survived fear, exhaustion, and despair, and now she could begin to thrive. The baby, too, began to grow stronger. Wrapped in warm blankets and held close, it smiled for the first time, its tiny fingers exploring the world around it. The mother felt a rush of joy, the purest she had experienced in months. She realized that her child's laughter and movement were not just signs of survival, but signs of life, of hope, of a future she could now imagine. One afternoon, an elder sat with her by the fire, speaking in gentle words while pointing to the baby and then to her. Though the mother could not understand every word, she felt the meaning. "You are doing well. You are strong. You are part of this family now." The simple gesture, the steady gaze, gave her courage. She realized that strength was not about fighting alone, but about accepting help when it was offered. She also began to share small parts of her story, though she spoke cautiously. She told of the fear she had lived with, the nights she had cried silently, the danger she had fled. The tribe listened without judgment, offering comfort with their silence and gentle nods. She felt heard in a way she never had before. She realized that safety was more than physical shelter. It was understanding, compassion, and community. As the days turned into weeks, the mother found herself growing attached to the tribe. She watched how they cared for one another, how they shared responsibilities, how they celebrated life even in small ways. She began to smile more freely, laugh more easily, and feel a sense of peace she had thought was impossible. She also began to dream again, dreams of a future where her child could grow strong, happy, and safe. Even as the snow melted and the seasons slowly shifted, the mother and her child remained with the tribe. She helped with small tasks, learning the rhythms of life in the community. She felt a sense of purpose returning, a connection to the world that had been missing for so long. Each day she grew stronger, more confident, and more certain that she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the evenings, she would sit by the fire with the baby on her lap, listening to the elders' stories, watching the flames dance and flicker. She felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the warmth and safety, but for the kindness and wisdom that surrounded her. She realized that survival was only the first step. Healing, growth, and connection were equally important. And in the company of the tribe, she was beginning to experience all three. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond fear. She pictured a future where her child could run and play without worry, where she could live without looking over her shoulder. She felt a small, steady flame of hope burning in her heart, fueled by the care of the people who had rescued her and the bond she shared with her child. The mother understood that the law had failed her, but the Lakota tribe had provided what law never could: compassion, belonging, and dignity. They had given her more than safety. They had given her a chance to reclaim her life. She held her baby close, feeling the small heartbeat against her own, and whispered a vow she intended to keep, that she would protect this life, nurture it, and ensure it grew in a world of care and love. The snow outside glimmered in the soft light of dawn, but inside, the warmth of fire and community created a world that was brighter than any day. She felt the heavy weight of fear lifting, replaced by a determination to survive, to heal, and to build a life for her child that was filled with hope and possibility. The days grew longer, and with the passing of time, the young mother began to feel a new sense of belonging. The snow had melted in many places, revealing the pale green shoots of early spring, but the memory of the blizzard and the long night of fear lingered in her mind. She held her baby close each morning, feeling the steady heartbeat beneath her hand, and for the first time she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond survival. Each small smile from her child reminded her that the world could still be gentle, that kindness and care existed even after so much hardship. The tribe had become more than protectors. They were teachers, guides, and companions. Every day they invited her to participate in simple tasks that helped the community thrive. She learned to prepare food using the resources they had, gathering roots and herbs, stirring thick soups over the fire, and learning the careful art of cooking without waste. Each task, no matter how small, gave her a sense of purpose she had never felt in months. The baby watched, sometimes babbling or gurgling, as she worked, and she found herself smiling at the tiny life she was nurturing. Elders often shared their knowledge and stories, and the mother listened attentively. They spoke of resilience, of overcoming hardship, and of the importance of balance in life. The stories were filled with lessons, not only about survival in the physical world, but also about strength in the spirit. She began to understand that the tribe's way of life was not just about protecting each other from danger, but also about nurturing the mind and heart. She realized that healing was more than warmth and food. It was learning, understanding, and feeling connected. The baby thrived in this environment. Wrapped in soft blankets and held often, it began to show curiosity about the world around it. Tiny hands reached for the firelight. Small feet kicked in delight, and bright eyes followed the movements of the tribe. The mother watched with quiet pride, feeling a sense of accomplishment and hope. Each day her child grew stronger, and with it, her own confidence and sense of safety grew as well. She felt capable not just of surviving, but of raising her child with love and care. One afternoon, the mother was invited to observe a sacred ceremony. She had seen glimpses of rituals before, elders moving gracefully, the soft beat of drums, quiet chants that seemed to reach deep into the soul. Today she would participate in a small way, holding her child as she observed the practices, the rhythm of the drums, the rise and fall of voices, and the movements of the people created a sense of harmony she had never experienced. She pressed the baby close to her chest, feeling its heartbeat match the rhythm, and felt a connection not only to her child, but to the tribe itself. The elders welcomed her gently, explaining through gestures and simple words that these practices were meant to bring peace and strength. She learned to move with care, to listen with attention, and to respect the rituals without fear or hesitation. With each step and each breath she felt her spirit lighten. The tension and fear that had weighed on her for so long began to fade. For the first time, she felt that she could be more than a survivor. She could be a participant in life, a contributor, a mother who nurtured not only her child, but herself. In the following days, the mother became more confident in her routines. She learned to care for her child in ways she had never imagined, teaching the baby to reach for objects, encouraging small movements, and celebrating each tiny success. The baby laughed and gurgled in response, and she felt a joy that had been buried beneath months of fear. She realized that every act of care, every smile shared, was a step toward reclaiming the life that had been stolen from her. The tribe continued to support her with patience and kindness. They did not rush her, nor did they expect her to overcome months of hardship in a single day. They offered guidance when needed and gave space when she needed quiet. Slowly, she began to regain her strength, her voice, and her confidence. She could speak more freely now, telling small parts of her story, sharing her hopes and fears, and finding that the tribe listened without judgment. Their understanding was a balm, and she allowed herself to trust again. One morning, as the sun rose over the plains, she stepped outside with her child in her arms. The snow had melted completely, and the world seemed alive with light and color. She breathed deeply, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs, and watched as the baby's eyes followed the movement of the wind, the sway of the grass, and the flutter of birds overhead. She realized that they were part of this world now, not hidden, not afraid, but present, alive, and free. The mother began to help more actively in the community. She assisted in preparing meals, collecting water, and teaching her child to be aware of the surroundings in gentle ways. Each day brought new lessons, not only for the baby but for her as well. She learned patience, resilience, and the power of small, consistent efforts. She discovered that life could be filled with meaning even after great suffering, and that love and care were not just luxuries but necessities for survival and growth. The elders often spoke to her about the importance of balance, between strength and vulnerability, between giving and receiving, between survival and joy. She began to understand that accepting help was not a weakness, but a form of strength. By allowing herself to lean on the tribe, she could nurture herself and her child more effectively. She felt her fear slowly transforming into courage, and her despair transforming into hope. The baby's laughter became a soundtrack to her days. Its tiny hands grasped for her fingers, and its small feet kicked in delight as she moved with it. She began to smile more easily, laugh more freely, and feel a sense of peace that she had not known in years. Each day she felt stronger, not only physically but emotionally and spiritually. The bond between mother and child grew deeper, fortified by the care and warmth of the community surrounding them. She also began to form connections with other women in the tribe. They shared their experiences, offered guidance, and became friends who understood her struggles without needing explanation. They taught her practical skills, shared stories of resilience, and reminded her that she was not alone. The mother realized that healing was not only about surviving the storm, but about building relationships, learning from others, and embracing the strength of community. One evening, as the sun set over the plains, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, the mother sat by the fire with her child on her lap. She watched the flames flicker and dance, casting shadows that moved gently across the ground. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the tribe, for their care, for the life of her child, and for the opportunity to rebuild. The hardships of the past still lingered in her mind, but they no longer defined her. She was no longer simply surviving. She was living. She whispered softly to her child, "We are safe now. We have each other, and we have this family to help us. We will be okay." The baby cooed in response, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. It was the warmth of hope, trust, and love. She realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and her child had already overcome the worst, and together they could face anything. In the following weeks, the mother continued to grow into her new life. She learned to move through the world with confidence, to care for her child with skill and patience, and to participate fully in the community around her. Each day brought new joys, new lessons, and new connections. She began to see a future that had seemed impossible in the frozen night of her flight. A future filled with love, safety, and hope. The tribe became a second family to her. They celebrated her progress, encouraged her when she struggled, and offered quiet support when words were not needed. She realized that the strength of this community lay not only in their survival skills, but in their ability to nurture, to care, and to love. And she, too, was learning to nurture, to care, and to love. Not just her child, but herself. By the end of the season, the mother had transformed. She was no longer the frightened woman fleeing a blizzard. She was a confident, capable mother, strong and aware of her own worth. She had discovered that survival was not only about escaping danger, but about embracing life, learning from it, and building connections that made her stronger. Her child thrived beside her, a living reminder of resilience, hope, and the possibility of a better future. The seasons began to change, and with them came a sense of new beginnings. The young mother looked out over the plains, the snow long melted, revealing grass dotted with wildflowers, and the soft curve of distant hills. The air smelled fresh and alive, filled with the faint scent of earth, grass, and wood smoke. She held her child close, feeling the warmth of the tiny body against her own. The baby had grown stronger over the months, its eyes bright and alert, hands reaching for everything around it, and a laugh that filled her heart with joy. The mother had changed as well. She no longer felt the constant shadow of fear pressing against her chest. Each day she grew more confident, learning to trust her own judgment, her own strength, and the support of the tribe. She understood that the hardships she had endured were part of her past, not her future. The warmth of the community, the guidance of the elders, and the love she shared with her child had given her something more valuable than she had ever imagined: hope. Each morning she joined the tribe in their daily activities. She helped gather food, repair shelters, and care for the animals that roamed the plains. She learned to move through the world with purpose and attention, her senses attuned to the subtle signs of nature. She taught her child to observe as well, pointing out birds in the sky, tracks in the soft earth, and the patterns of wind and sun. Every lesson was a connection, not just between her and the child, but between them and the world around them. The elders often spoke to her, offering guidance not through lectures but through stories and small actions. They told tales of courage, of people who had faced impossible odds and survived, of the power of community and kindness. She listened carefully, absorbing the lessons in silence, realizing that wisdom was not only spoken but lived. Each story reminded her that life was both fragile and strong, that hope could endure even in the harshest conditions. The mother began to feel a deep sense of belonging. She knew that she was not alone anymore. The tribe had become a family, their support unwavering, their care unconditional. She felt a sense of peace that she had never experienced before. No longer was she running from fear. She was moving toward a future she could shape with her own hands. The baby thrived in this environment, learning through touch, sight, and sound, surrounded by warmth and encouragement. One afternoon, as the sun cast a golden light across the plains, the mother walked with her child near a small stream. The water sparkled as it flowed, and birds sang from the nearby trees. She allowed herself to pause and breathe deeply, taking in the beauty around her. She realized that the journey from the blizzard to this moment had been more than a physical journey. It had been a journey of the heart and spirit. She had moved from fear to courage, from isolation to connection, from despair to hope. The child giggled, reaching for a smooth stone near the edge of the water. She watched the tiny hands grasp it, the small fingers flexing and releasing, and felt a surge of love and pride. This life, so small and fragile, had endured. And she had endured as well. He had protected, nurtured, and guided the child to safety. Each step of the journey had been difficult, but the outcome was proof of resilience and strength. The tribe continued to involve her in ceremonies and traditions, and she began to take a more active role. She learned to weave, to prepare herbal remedies, and to participate in the rituals that honored life, nature, and community. Each action was a connection to the past, to the earth, and to the people who had become her family. She discovered that strength was not only in surviving challenges, but also in nurturing life, in learning, and in contributing to the well-being of others. Evenings were now a time of reflection. She would sit by the fire, the child on her lap, and watch the flames dance. The light flickered on the faces of the tribe members, casting gentle shadows that seemed to move with the rhythm of life itself. She felt gratitude for everything: the protection of the tribe, the warmth of their care, the life of her child, and the opportunity to rebuild. The fear of the past still lingered at the edges of her mind, but it no longer controlled her. She had reclaimed her life. The mother began to teach her child simple skills: how to notice the patterns of the wind, how to recognize edible plants, and how to respect the animals and the land. She shared the lessons she had learned from the elders, instilling values of kindness, observation, and patience. Her child absorbed these lessons naturally, their small body moving with curiosity and delight. Watching the child grow, she felt a sense of continuity, understanding that life, care, and knowledge passed from one generation to the next. One day, an elder approached her with a small, carefully carved object. Through gestures and simple words, the elder conveyed its meaning. It was a symbol of resilience and belonging. She accepted it with gratitude, feeling the weight and importance of the gift. In that moment, she realized that she was no longer just a visitor. She was part of the tribe, recognized and accepted. The acknowledgement filled her with a sense of pride and responsibility. The mother also reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the blizzard, the cold, the fear, and the exhaustion. She remembered holding her child tightly through the storm, whispering promises of safety. Those memories no longer caused pain, but reminded her of her own strength. She had endured, and she had arrived in a place where life could flourish. The hardships of the past were a testament to her courage and resilience, and she carried that knowledge with quiet confidence. As the seasons continued to change, the mother found herself dreaming of a future she could now shape. She imagined her child growing strong and curious, learning the ways of the land, the values of kindness and courage, and the joy of community. She imagined herself contributing fully, teaching, learning, and building a life filled with hope. The past had taught her the importance of protection and vigilance, but the present and future offered the possibility of freedom, growth. The baby laughed for the first time in the open fields, reaching toward the sky, and she felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. This child had survived the blizzard, the cold, and the fear of an uncertain world. She had survived as well, moving from a place of fear to one of strength. Together they had created a new life, one built on care, trust, and love. The tribe remained a constant presence, offering guidance when needed and giving space when appropriate. Their support was steady and unwavering, and the mother felt a sense of security she had never known. She understood that the journey was ongoing, that life would continue to bring challenges, but she now had the tools, knowledge, and community to face them. She felt empowered in a way she had never imagined, confident that she could protect her child and herself in any circumstance. In the quiet of the evening, she often held the child close and whispered promises of the future. "We are safe now. We have a family. We have this land. We have each other. And we will live, thrive, and grow." The child responded with small coos and gentle movements, as if understanding the meaning behind the words. She smiled, feeling a deep connection that went beyond words, beyond survival, a bond of trust, love, and hope. The mother also began to think about the lesson she would carry forward. She would remember the kindness of the tribe, the warmth of their guidance, and the strength she had discovered within herself. She would teach her child the value of community, the importance of resilience, and the power of compassion. She realized that survival was only the beginning. The true journey was in living fully, nurturing life, and embracing hope. By the end of the season, the mother felt a sense of completeness. She had arrived at a place where she could breathe, where she could care for her child without fear, and where she could participate fully in the rhythms of life. The blizzard, the fear, and the uncertainty were behind her. What lay ahead was a life of possibility, of growth, and of love. As she walked across the plains, the baby nestled against her chest. She looked at the horizon and saw a world filled with light, life, and hope. The struggles of the past had shaped her, but they did not define her. She had found safety, belonging, and strength through the care of the tribe. She had built a bond with her child that could never be broken, and she had discovered the courage within herself to move forward, ready to face the world with confidence, hope, and love. The sun set over the plains, casting golden hues across the land. The mother held her child close, feeling the warmth of the fire in her heart and the light of a new beginning before her. The journey from the blizzard to this moment had been long and difficult, but it had led to a life of safety, connection, and possibility. She had learned that true strength came not only from surviving, but from embracing care, love, and community. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the beauty of the plains and the warmth of belonging, she whispered softly to her child, "We are free now. We are safe now. And we will live, grow, and be happy together." The child cooed, tiny hands reaching for her face, and she knew that the future was theirs to shape, full of promise, hope, and love.